Alright, last video we got the engine mounts built. I used a $22 kit on eBay that came with these tabs and this plate with bushings that bolts to the block. And then I just used another piece of flat steel to kind of rebuild this little arch here. The factory mounting pads were cut out of the K-member because this was motor plated before. So I rebuilt all that stuff, notched out the K-member. Now the motor fits really nice. I didn't do a full video on this, but I did rebuild this little ear that was broken off of the transmission. So I just took a piece of flat aluminum plate and then welded it back in there. So next step now is to be lifting the motor and trans back up, bolt it in, and I want to start mocking up turbos today. So I'm going to use a little jig, same jig that I used on the Ranger here. I'm sure I'm going to have to modify it, but that's kind of what I want to do. Then I can start doing some really badass clickbait thumbnails with the turbos, because let's be honest, nobody's here for my personality. So I did actually have to refill my engine hoist today, because last time I was taking the engine out, I couldn't get it up all the way, and that's never good. So let's try to put it back in. See, this is what I'm talking about here. It only came up about this far, and I pump it, and it doesn't do anything now. So I got to figure that out. Okay, got her back in, and I got my little bracket hanging over here. It's a little bit too big because the Ranger's a little bit wider. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it down the middle. So I'll measure the center and then cut some space out of the middle, because the way that this thing worked was it just rested right inside the fender like this, and then these holes were used to hang the turbos. I do have a little rod coming off of here with a mounting point, so I could twist that and then put it probably in that bolt hole just to lock it in place. So I'll cut that thing, shrink it, and we'll go from there and kind of figure out where we want to hang these bad boys. Alright, so here's kind of what we got so far. Took a little bit to get it to this point, but I think I like them right there. They're probably not in their exact final spot, but I do like this setup here. These are not mirror image turbos, they're just regular rotation turbos, so it's kind of hard to make them look symmetrical because they are identical, right? So I think pulling them forward towards the headlights kind of hides the outlet on the compressor on both sides. So that one comes out the back, this one comes out the front, but if you kind of look at it from this view, it does hide those and gives it a little bit more of a symmetrical look. And it also does allow the exhaust side to be tucked down to an area where you're not going to be able to see it. So that one comes in from the bottom. This one over here comes in from the top. So if you do stand back, you can kind of give the illusion of it being symmetrical, even though they're not. So that's kind of the idea. I do have to do a little bit more test fitting. I want to test fit the radiator and make sure that stuff is good. I do like this placement also because it will give nice clear routing for the radiator lines. Nice clear routing for the turbo drains. The feeds that came with the car are already going to be good length, so that's nice. The cold side piping, we basically have a nice straight shot right down to the intercooler right here. I'll probably just take it and snake it around here and weld it all together so it's just one nice piece. So like I said, just kind of ballpark, that's the idea. I do want to put the accessories on, get that stuff fitted, test radiator, kind of get everything in place before I would start welding anything or cutting any pipes. So this also does allow for a nice straight shot to come down and do a bumper dump without doing some kind of like a crazy weird angle. So we'll be able to come off of here actually with like probably a 45 and then go down, or worst case a 90, which is exactly what it had coming off of it before. But we'll be able to do a little bit of an extension and then go into the bend. This bolt is kind of tough to get to because the bend was so tight that you can't actually get the bolt out of it. So we will have to poke a hole here, and move some of the wiring, but that'll also allow a nice source to the wideband. We'll be able to tuck that thing back there, but I'll probably put it on this side. This is just me, but I always put the wideband on the driver's side, mostly because with the LS engine, the driver's side bank seems to be a little bit more sensitive to fueling. Number 7 is notorious for failing. I've had a couple situations where I bent the whole driver's side bank. I've seen that happen on several other builds too, where the whole driver's side bank gets bent. So I usually put the wideband on the driver's side. Terminator X has one wideband. If you have a Dominator or whatever with 2 widebands, that's cool. You can read both banks. But just me personally, I always like to put it on the driver's side just because of the sensitivity and the issues there. I'd rather have the fueling for the motor be based on what is being read from the driver bank. Might be irrelevant, but that's my logic for it. So there's one final look at it. Starting to come together, almost looking like a car again.